Amisha Jain. I head Levi's for the region for South Asia, Middle East, Africa and Eastern European markets. I happen to be based out of Bangalore. Pleasure to be here. So thank you IREC for having me here today. I think it's a very interesting topic that we've been discussing for years now. I mean, if I go back and if I was here, standing here in front of you a decade back, we were still saying think local, right? I mean, we're a global brand, think local. I remember I was at Nike at one point in time and we used to say global brand, think local, act local. And this is a journey, right? And I don't think these are cliched words. I don't think these are phrases which are ever going to go out of fashion, right? Especially in the fashion industry. The reality is that the question rather is what does it mean to each of us? And I have now seen this space in India and outside India for for a few decades now. And it's a topic which is very close to my heart, right? So if I'm also not talking India, but if I was doing the same thing which I do, let's say for Turkey, the same question arises there. How do you make sure that as a global brand, you act local? I mean, you have to be relevant to the local consumer when you are catering to something which is as close as fashion for them, right? It is their self-expression. So, well, look, I mean, it's a fabulous topic. You know, thank you for having me here. It's a topic very close to my heart. It's also one of those which is one of the key factors where I would say Levi's as a brand continues to be at the center of culture. Something that we sort of hold very close to our heart, right? And it's also a key factor of why we're doing exceptionally well in this market. So today, in terms of denim, if you were to look at it, we are the #1 denim brand in men's and women's, and head and shoulders apart. And the reason is only simple, is that we've, over the years, and now we've been in the market for since 1994 is when Levi's entered India, a brand which has 170 years of legacy, of course. But in 94, when we got here, the question was, how do we make sure that we are relevant to the Indian consumer, right? It's about their needs, it's about their preferences, and how do we cater to them? And ever since, I think we've been on this journey, right? So I think for Levi's, this term of being at the center of culture is very, very critical, and I'll talk to you guys about it a little bit. So yeah, it's not a catchphrase, it's not like think global, act local and personal is a catchphrase for us. It's a philosophy we live by. And we recognize that, you know, to connect with the consumer of India, if you think about it, the Indian landscape is not a single homogeneous landscape, right? India is a space, a landscape which is very diverse in nature, and it's also sort of has a fabric which has a lot of regional nuances. It has a fabric where consumers, their aspirations, their lifestyles vary from region to region. And it's very critical for a fashion brand to ensure that, you know, you are sort of understanding their needs, their need of self-expression, right? Their individuality. And those are the things that come into play, right? So as a brand, when we connect with the consumer, it's very, very critical for us that we come from a place of authenticity. We come from a place where they do believe that the brand is genuinely speaking to me. And that's all what we're trying to do, right? So it's about finding this large balance between a global thought process and ensuring that we are weaving it within the fabric of what India or Bharat, so to say, stands for, right? And you know, like I said, I think I'm happy to talk about this topic for a very long time, but you know, given the time we have, I'll probably leave you with a few thoughts and also talk about what we're doing as a brand. I mean, we all know, right? Fundamentally, we all know that consumers today are extremely savvy. They're aspirational, but an Indian consumer, and for the last decade, if I were to talk about one thing, what I have seen is that Indian consumer is extremely discerning. Right? For us to think that we can teach them something is wrong. I think what is important for a brand is to see that who they are and how do we cater to them. And when I look at North, East, West, South, I mean, we couldn't be more diverse. Every country, by the way, that I run thinks that they are diverse. But the more I look at it, there are only two markets that I find diverse. One is India, and the second market which I feel is extremely diverse is Dubai. You go from one mall to the other, the demographic changes. And the demographic changes and how? Like it's not that they are people of the same cultural fabric, but they are people of different nationalities. So Dubai offers a very different challenge. And that's true for us as well. I mean, our consumers extremely aspirational, discerning, highly digitally connected, right? 15-year-olds to 75-year-olds. They're still browsing. A 15-year-old is browsing on Insta, 75-year-old is browsing on WhatsApp groups with checking out saris on those groups. And trust me, I mean, it's amazing the level of selling that you can do through those groups, right? So how do you connect to this diverse landscape of consumers? And I mean, that problem statement applies to us as well, right? I also will say that Indian consumer today, from an aspirational quotient point of view, when you look at the digital fabric, when you look at the access to digital they have, the one interesting thing is they're all after their own identity. It is no longer about, Levi's has told me, this is how I need to look. It is about, this is who I am, this is my identity, tell me how you're going to cater to me, right? And that's the question consumers ask us, and that's what we try to do. And I always look at these bustling streets of Delhi, and you think of Coimbatore. And you see that the consumers, if you think that there's one consumer that's highly fashion savvy, and if you think the other is not, that's a mistake. They are after their own style quotient. And it surprises me every time, especially through our tailor shop. I don't know how many of you know this, but we have this concept of a large size tailor shop in the center of our stores where consumers can come and personalize their product. And to my surprise, the most creative work happens in the tier 2, tier 3 markets. They come with their own style, they come with their own designs, they come and want to personalize to the extent that I have seen amazing skirts made out of bottoms. I have seen jackets made out of distressed bottoms, and these are things that get done and tailored at our tailor shops, right? So it is about this personal style, this individuality. It is what I want to express. The beauty is what we wear today is no longer about my style and trend. What we wear today is about what is the story I'm telling about myself. I am the story. So I feel the landscape is changing. Indian consumer is shifting drastically, and I think it's a myth if a brand thinks that I will sell you stuff. Only if you're selling him or her a story, a belief that they believe in, is when they connect back to you, right? And of course, there's digitization, there's personalization, tell me who I am, who you are, and tell me how I connect with you. All of that good stuff is there. Everybody will tell you e-commerce is trending. Everybody will tell you tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 is growing. All of that good stuff is there. The question for all of us, a decade later, and I remember having a very similar conversation 10 years back, and that's why I started by saying that, you know, the question remains the same. A decade later, the question for us is, how are we really embracing data and AI and to augment? And the idea is not about saying, hey, her size is 32 and his size is 34, how do we cater? That's not the idea anymore. That used to be 5-7 years back. The idea today is, she belongs to a certain region in India, but she relates to the couture in Paris. She belongs to a region in India in the north, but honestly, she actually relates to the style and the art out of, you know, Vienna. Now, these are things which are changing. In my mind, he belongs to a tribe in a certain place, and that's the new generation. The generation is not about her size, her demographic, his size, the region, the language, the nuances. That's all old stuff. The question for us now is, can I figure out who this person is who lives in Tamil Nadu, who's been using the traditional fabrics, expressing themselves with Western cuts, but actually relates to certain parts in Africa. Now that is the beauty of today's fashion. That's how connected they are. They're browsing and they're expressing their style by getting inspired through Insta, but they're also buying our stuff to kind of cater to that particular inspiration of theirs, right? And that's where a brand like Levi's comes in. That's where our challenge, that's a challenge to us, but at the same time it is exciting, because I know today from my learnings that this is what the consumer of Africa looks like. How do I bring that into India? And that's the big question we are trying to solve. So our problem statement is very wide now. If people think that with data AI, the problem statement and the answers are getting sharper, it's actually the other way around. The world is just starting to open up, right? So if I were to kind of bring this down to how are we thinking about, so to say, acting locally and personal for a consumer? We are a global brand, right? We are a global brand that has been in this country for since 1994, and like I said, people have embraced the brand, and we're very fortunate, right? There's so much love for the brand as you get to the market. I mean, we love our brand, but I also know that all of you love our brand. And the beauty is that as we cater to our consumers, we think of three things. The product through which we cater to him or her, the platform we cater through, which is the channels and the platform, and the third thing, which is probably the most important one for us, is how we communicate with them. How do we market to them? And this is where I think we bring the nuance of Levi's, right? So let me just tell you, from a product point of view, what we do is, 95% of our product is locally made for India, especially here. We design for India, and the beauty is the same fabric of denim that you would buy in the US looks very different in India. It's catering to India. We have everything from hemp to tencel, but at the same time we have linen, and we also have the stretch, four-way stretch bottoms, etc., which our Indian consumer prefers, right? Breathability is critical. So how do we make sure that we are acting local? We are going after and giving them what they need is performance cool. How are we making sure that we're giving that to them? So that's one part of it in terms of us providing, and I'll give you a classic example of our 501 denim. How many of you know of 501? Both hands, please. My favorite, yes, thank you. Now, 501 just celebrated 150 years. I'm sure all of you know that. We celebrated that in 2023. The beauty of 501 is that it's been here, it's been through the generations. Just a little tidbit for you, 501 is not our largest seller fit in India because our consumer prefers a slightly different fabric. But the beauty of that iconic denim, when we celebrated it, is thinking about the local preferences, cultural nuances of the country. We had actually created a very special edition of the bottom. So we created a special edition 501 at the time. And in that, we had created back patches. You guys know the back patches that Levi's puts? We had created back patches in about 6 languages. And guess what? One of them was Hindi. And it is still sitting in most of the wardrobes. A beautiful back patch, which is in Hindi. I mean, that is the connect from a local cultural connect point of view, right? And that is what Levi's strategy is, right? In terms of how do we make sure that we are relevant? It's not just a nod to the cultural nuances, right? It's an acceptance of the fact that we belong here. This is our strategy. We want to make sure we are at the center of culture. And that's what our product strategy is about. I'll come to the second big piece. And I think most global brands don't think of it this way, but I feel, and very proudly I'd say that we do something, which is when you look at our stores, and I don't know how many of you visited our large boxes. One of them is in Nexus, Kormangla in Bangalore, Jayanagar, or in fact, CP Delhi, one of the largest Levi's small stores across the globe. So India is proud to host the largest Levi's store in the country. CP is one of the largest stores we have in the world as well, right? And that's the beauty. But the important part is not the largeness of the store. The important part is 2 things. We recognize the fact that our consumer shops and navigates differently. So if you look at a Levi's store in India versus you look at a Levi's store outside of India, the navigation is very different. The way we communicate is very different. The fits are very different. And again, going back to as we refit and we resize, we're trying to get more and more local to make sure that we are working through the shopper behavior and we are ensuring that we're supporting their journey that way. So that's, I think, a second example which stands apart for me because, as I look at all my markets, some of the markets do mimic the West, right? Some of the markets do mimic US for that matter, or Europe. But some of these markets like India, Dubai, etc. for us, they have their own regional nuances and we make sure that we cater to those markets very differently. And I think that's the beauty of the retail that we have here. The third and the most, probably the most relevant as we talk about as a global brand, how do you think local? You guys all know that we had Deepika as, and will still have for some part of it, Deepika Padukone as a brand ambassador. We've recently onboarded Diljit, and obviously that's a big thing. But I think what is more important here is that it's the cultural relevance that remains very close to our heart, right? For us, that is very, very important. As we think about the millennials, which are fashion forward, so I'm not saying that they're gone, I mean, they're the fashion forward millennials, but it's the Gen Z, how do we cater to them, right? And how do we talk to them? So us connecting to the music festivals, right? Whether it was Lollapalooza or it is the Illuminati tour that we did recently, the idea was to connect to these consumers in a way that is closest to them. We want to be part of the consumers and their journey when they are actually in their element, when they are in their true selves, right? And that's the idea of us connecting to these festivals. The idea is not to sell more. We don't go out there and sell product, but the idea is to be where the consumers are. At that time, we love to obviously collaborate with artists. We love to collaborate with the singers. We want to make sure their expression comes to life, right? And this is the place where we say, act hyper-local. This is the place where consumers come and build their product, which in our tailor shop saying that this is my identity, this is who I am, right? And along those lines, obviously, you know, we've gone ahead and done partnerships and collaborations in the space of art, lifestyle, fashion. We've gone beyond being an apparel brand, creating these timeless pieces, which are, I'd say, art pieces. They have nothing to do with denim that one would wear, but it is about the denim that would stay as your centerpiece, right? And again, that's where the brand starts becoming part of the journey of a consumer and their day-to-day lives and the fabric of the society. And that's what we're here to do. In a nutshell, if you ask me, I think our endeavor is continuously to see that how do we sort of embrace a culture and how do we get more and more closer. And you know, I don't want to leave you with this thought that this is only an India-only phenomena. I think very recently in South Africa, when we were to, and we were building, and we're still building our brand over there, and we realized that the body types are different. We've actually built a very different product, a curvy product, which is very unique to that market. We're catering to that market through local KOLs. And the idea being, again, it's a lot of effort, right? If you think about it, a lot of you are from the industry. It's a lot of effort to build product which caters to the specific consumer. But I also feel that that one thing is a big unlock for how you connect with that consumer as well. So I think all in all, I'd say if one has to, as a global brand, that a global brand with this passion and belief and aspiration to be part of the generations to come, and that's what our aspiration is to be part of the generations to come for India. We want to be part of this local fabric. I think the one thing that we have done and we will continue to do is to make sure that we are committed to the self-expression. We are committed to the individuality, and we are committed to the cultural nuances of that particular market, right? And in this case, obviously, our belief, and I mean, our belief remains unwavering. I know for times to come, Levi's will continue to be on this journey, bringing the best of Levi's to the consumers in whichever part of India or Bharat, as you would say. And we would do that through the various lenses that we have, right? And we are continuing to learn, we continue to bridge the gap. But it's a beautiful journey. Like I said, I mean, I can keep talking about it, but I'll kind of come to a close on that, saying that, you know, today for us, fashion at Levi's is not just fashion. It is about us shaping a movement with our consumers. We are shaping a movement with our consumers of self-expression, of individuality, of celebrating the culture. That's who we are. That's what we will continue to do. And I'm so glad I was able to share that with you. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions if you have.
We'll pass on the mic to you. Just give us one moment, please.
I think what you've nuanced in terms of fashion for Levi's is very interesting, but my question is that are you also looking to extend the categories of Levi's into various other lines like innerwear or maybe athleisure or other categories which are very fashionable today?
Absolutely, Ruth. I think, I mean, if you look at what we do, I mean, you know, commercial models aside, but we do have We do cater to various categories. In fact, I will highlight the fact that in India, an extension of a category that doesn't exist so much in the other parts of the world is shirts. We do ton of shirts. We do like a huge line of linen shirts, cotton shirts, etc. And that's our legacy also. But that's an extension for us. Obviously shirts, t-shirts, tops and bottoms obviously is a given. I know what you're asking. We do, by the way, we do have innerwear, but we don't do it directly. It's a different commercial model. We do have accessories. And see, the endeavor every time is to be doing two things. We are a brand that is known for quality and its timelessness, right? And that's who we are. I mean, that's our legacy. And so in everything that we do, we want to make sure that we bring that. And so the answer to your question is yes. The answer is absolutely. We want to make sure that we bring in every category that we can do right by. Now the question is, how much bandwidth do you have? And where do you want to prioritize, right? At the end of the day, all of us as leaders always come back to the same question, is bandwidth, prioritization, right? So in that, we want to make sure that we keep going deeper and deeper into the categories that we already have. Having said that, I mean, we continue to explore footwear, we continue to explore accessories and everything, so yeah.
Amisha, lovely story, lovely talk. You know, Levi's is one of those brands that had real persistence. I think through 2008, 9, 10, people kind of second guessed the brand, but you all really pushed through, and that's why today you all are far ahead. In the local and global scheme of things, because Levi's is this iconic US brand, etc., and you were talking about India being so diverse, what percentage of style designs today are still, you know, global in nature, and what percentage is like localized, if I may ask?
So I'd say India product is 95% India. But I think we have the luxury of having India-centric design also. We are a very unique market in the Levi's portfolio. And 95% is India. Having said that, I will nuance it with the fact that, look, if I am going after a barrel bottom, right? I mean, or I am going after a baggy dad bottom, right? It's not like we're not doing that globally. We are. But we're taking that DNA, we're taking that learning, we're taking from our mothership in terms of design, but we are localizing it, and localizing it in various ways, right? It's not just sourcing of localizing the sourcing, we're localizing it in terms of the fabric innovation, in terms of just simple things like, you know, how rigid to what stretch, right? So to answer your question, how much of India is India? 95%. Is all of it really built from scratch? I don't think so. A lot of our tops, and we sell a ton of tops in India, so while global will be selling maybe one top for every 3 bottoms, we sell more tops than bottoms, right? So there are those nuances. So tops, I'd say India is ahead of globe in terms of what we bring to the table, what we design and what we get to the market. So I think, yeah, to answer your question, I mean, if you were to go by hard numbers, 95% of India is local, but I wouldn't say that from a design aesthetic point of view, it is 95%, right? So there is definitely overlaps, but we do a significant amount of shift to make sure that our product is more relevant. And simple things, right? Each of us, I mean, if I were to ask most of you, I'd probably find 5% of you wearing a very rigid bottom. Most of you would prefer a stretch. And that's the nuance of us as a consumer economy, right? That is us. I sell the same product in an African market, or I sell the same product in Turkey or in Eastern Europe. The acceptance is very different. So to that point, I think it's important to understand the consumer and then cater, right? And for our market here, I mean, we're doing really well, and we're very happy that we're being able to cater to this market, you know. I know you had a question right there. Sorry, yeah.
Who had a question?
Yeah, can you see me if I keep sitting, or you want me to stand up?
No, I can hear you. Yeah,
okay.
Good.
Great. First of all, brilliant insights. And I'm a consumer. I have nothing to do with the industry, by the way, so sorry for any factual errors in my question. But this, so double tapping into this, we are 95% India, and we mostly cater to what the Indian consumers asks of us rather than us telling them what they should do. Does that also become a limiting factor? And I'll expand a little bit in terms of where I'm coming from. So I live in Europe, and I often see the designs in Levi's being much bolder, much more in line with the, this is all my perception by the way, with the current streetwear trend versus what I see in India. In fact, even if I see the new Diljit commercial, it's the standard denim jacket, denim pants, but less of those fancy varsity jackets, baggy. So yeah, does catering to India also limits you from innovating while you are quite literally, pun intended, the trend setter in rest of the markets?
That's a great question. I'd say I'd answer that question in two parts. Actually, no. In fact, catering to India does not limit us. We are actually much wider in width over here. We're actually also, I'd say we are actually quite trendy in India as well. Now, what you're experiencing, and again, we can chat about which stores you've been to, but what you're experiencing is exactly Levi's that's relevant, let's say, to a Bangalore. So when you go to Punjab, right, when you go to Delhi, you will see a very different expression of the brand, and that comes back to us being very relevant to the local consumer. So to your question on, is that limiting us? Yes, my box size is only 10,000 square feet. I can only put so much, and I'll put what is relevant to the Bangalore consumer. Having said that, you go online and you'll probably find your varsities over there. So maybe we can get you some of that from the site. But the reality is, and that's the beauty of online, right? That's the beauty of e-commerce, that you'll be able to find what you're seeking as you search through our Insta and through our online platform. But you're absolutely right. You go to a store in Coimbatore, or you go to a store, Jayanagar store, yeah, you might have like, 10% of the high trend pieces, but a lot of it will come back to what our data is telling us that Bangalore wants, right? So is that limiting? Maybe for a 5% of the consumers, and you're probably one of them, right? But does that serve the purpose of the box? Yes, it does, right? And this is one of those things which is a fine balance between catering to business needs at the same time catering to a consumer. Having said that, if you speak to our store staff, they are fabulous, and they will probably guide you towards the site to say that, hey, this is, you can find it in a certain place. Having said all of that, the street style of Europe is not the style that Indian consumer is after. Indian consumer is still after certain fabrics, is still after a certain style, which the European consumer is not into as well, right? So to the point you were trying to make, will I still bring that style to India? Probably not. There is a chance we may not bring some of that stuff to India. And that's absolutely okay, right? I mean, as long as I can cater to this consumer through the endless aisle, so to say, that I have online. I will also add one more thing, right? There is a certain element of modesty in dressing that India has, which is not the case, let's say, which is very different when I cater to a South African consumer, or which is very different when we cater to a European consumer, right? And so how do I cater to a consumer that's sitting out of a Saudi Arabia and Dubai versus an Indian consumer or a Sri Lankan consumer? We want to make sure that you are also at the heart of that culture. And so I think all of those things also play a part in it, right? So our women's tops, for example, you'll find a very different expression of that based on which region you go to. I hope I answered your question.